I don't know. It should be recorded. I'm not the storage guy. That's a message for the storage guy. I'm the hosting guy tonight. This is great. The review. How's everyone doing out there? We're in that great sports confluence. Pretty soon we're coming up at the time I think that all 4 major professional sports will be played. I love it. I love watching playoff baseball while I'm doing fantasy football work as my job. 11-year-old me would think that was the coolest thing in the world. And sometimes I think it's the coolest thing in the world. Most of the time. Like tonight. All right. Let's go live. Staying alive in week 5, helping us stay alive. Chris Allen, Matt Waldman, soon to be joined by Dr. Jene Bramel. Matt, let's jump right in with the game update. A big NFC West slowdown. See, Freudian slip there. Tell us about the slowdown.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it's everyone expected this be kind of like a highlight-worthy, high-octane passing game type of situation. But, on the one hand, you have Seattle's run defense, which is the worst in the league. So they wanted to establish the run a little bit more with, with what the Rams were doing. And they were able to drive down the field, but, they've had some interceptions. Matthew Stafford threw an interception in the red zone. And then you also had a tipped pass off of a nice Jalen Ramsey defense of a Robert Woods pass, I believe, or a Van Jefferson target that ended up being an interception that ended one drive. And then you've had missed field goals on both sides as well. So they've been moving the ball up and down the field, both with the run and the pass, but they haven't been able to put it into the red zone or sustain some drives. Alex Collins has looked good in terms of his ability to gain yardage. He's been patient with setting up blocks. Sony Michel's in the game because there seems to be some sort of arm issue for Darrell Henderson. And Henderson ripped off a couple of decent runs. Matthew Stafford seems to have something going on with his index finger and has a compression bandage on with it. But Wilson's finding Lockett and Metcalf on a regular basis, being able to get down the field. And for the most part, until just now, he's been able to elude pressure. It looked like he just got sacked by Tyquan Lewis. It looks like very possible here. And then, you look at this game plan. I mean, there's a former scout on Twitter who kind of brought up something that I think, I tend to agree with, is that, Sean McVay's a little predictable. And then you see some other people who are Detroit Lions media go, welcome to the Matt Stafford experience, which is kind of that, Matt Stafford was supposed to be the guy to prove that Jared Goff was not a scapegoat. He was, or, that he really was at fault for all of this. But Sean McVay is a little predictable. And I think that defenses know that. And who better than a divisional opponent? And we have this nip and tuck game right now, which is, it's good football, but it's not, it's not fireworks that fantasy people always like.
No, because of the miscues. And like you said about McVay, I think it was Chris Brown that was bringing up smart football, if you don't know him, that the Rams running game hasn't really been very good. And that was the foundation during the good Jared Goff years, right? The run set up the pass. And going into this matchup against Seattle's run defense, 32nd in the league, you thought they were going to be able to do that. They weren't able to early. Like you said, it looks like there's some problem with maybe a stinger or something with Darrell Henderson. I should let Dr. Jene even speculate on those things instead of me. But he's out. Michel's in. Michel's running at least stubborn downhill. He's efficient. But it's not exactly the whiz-bang running game that we saw with Todd Gurley, with Stafford. The interception, and you soft pedaled a little bit, Matt, because was he trying to throw the ball away in the red zone?
Well, he was trying to. What was happening is that you had an adjustment that was happening with his receiver Van Jefferson, and Van Jefferson went one way, and Stafford expected him to go the other, and as a result, that got taken care of. And then when you look at the one thing that's been mentioned that the scout was mentioning that I thought was a great point is that, the Rams are no longer doing that underneath play action passing. It's kind of gone away, which, really is a great element to help out with the run too, because that's what really puts the linebackers in a bind and box defenders in a bind. And when you take that away, well, it takes away a lot of the bells and whistles where you can get some easy yards in the run game. And it seems like they've taken it away. And whether that's a Stafford choice, as the scout mentioned, or whether it was, it's something that McVay has just decided to veer away from. You can see that may also be a contribution to this end result.
And what we're seeing also is a little bit, again, this was a good conversation on Twitter. Anytime Chris Brown pops up, that a la Aaron Rodgers at times, he's not taking, and Aaron Rodgers, I think, has done a great job with this now in the Matt LaFleur offense, part of the Shanahan tree, taking what's there, taking the easy high percentage short play instead of keeping the play alive for something. And we always knew that was in Matthew Stafford's game. So that leads him. Let me touch on a few more things about the game, and then I'm going to toss it to you, Chris. You have Russell Wilson hitting passes downfield to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf for a touchdown. You have, like you said, Matt, Alex Collins looking pretty good. You're still being replaced in the 2-minute drill by DJ Dallas. Robert Woods, and this is another example, when the coach says something, we need to listen, right? When Sean McVay says we need to get Robert Woods more opportunities, guess what? He's getting more opportunities. 8 for 83. We just had a long one to Deshaun Jackson. But as we talked about before we went live, Chris, is the honeymoon over with Matthew Stafford? Sean McVay, like, this is a real quarterback. I have a real quarterback now. They gave up future first-round picks, and they did just take the lead. But is this, Darrell Henderson's back in and getting the touchdown, actually. But is this something where we have to really put away our excitement and hopes for this offense to take off with Matthew Stafford?
I don't think so. I do think that there's still a little bit more time for us to make at least that sort of determination, because I think part of the reason why we were so excited about Matthew Stafford taking over for Jared Goff in this Sean McVay offense is that it opened up more of the vertical concepts of that passing game that we just weren't able to see with Jared Goff. And within the first couple of weeks, and even tonight, actually, because I saw that deep shot to Deshaun Jackson earlier, I mean, we've seen that on display throughout most of the time that since Stafford has taken over. The first 4 weeks, we've seen those vertical concepts to Deshaun Jackson, to Van Jefferson. I mean, so I think that's still there, that those elements are still a part of that passing game. And like what Matt was talking about earlier with some of the other concepts being taken out of that offense, I think it's just a part of the evolution of what Sean McVay wants to do with Matthew Stafford. And I think that's still possible. It's just that they're having to go along and and actually learn together as they wind up having to deal with some of these, the struggles of having to fight against the other teams within the NFC West. I mean, I, for one, didn't really think that their game on Sunday was going to be that much of a pounding, but seeing him have to deal with pressure, seeing him have to deal with adjusting to that pressure, I think that probably gave him enough of a wake-up call to see what adjustments they need to make moving forward. They probably weren't able to integrate those into the offense this week on such a short turnaround. But I do think that there's enough there that they can continue to build on what they've been able to accomplish over the first, let's say, 4 weeks, and then continue on from there. So I don't know if the honeymoon's over. We'll see once we get to, let's say, postseason time. If we're considering them a team that is not just poised to get into the playoffs, but actually make a decent run at the playoffs, then I think we can start to make that determination. But through the first 4 weeks, I think the offense has been as advertised, and what Sean McVay had expected out of Matthew Stafford, when he brought him into the fold and ejected Jared Goff over to Detroit.
Yeah, the vertical passing when the offense has been working has been a breath of fresh air. We'll see about the running game. One of the reasons I picked the title tonight, Staying Alive in Week 5, is this has been quite a turbulent takeoff to the season. It seems like there's a lot of Jekyll and Hyde units. There's a lot of Jekyll and Hyde players and teams. And this is I'm calling it the Adam Harstad meridian, where you pass week 4 and now the data you have for the current season is as predictive or more predictive than ADP. But for the first few weeks, everything we put into ADP actually is still more predictive than the original data. But Matt, I still feel like there are a lot of teams, units that I don't quite have a handle on. Is there any, when I say that, is there a team, is there a unit, is there a player, is there something you're gonna be watching this weekend, maybe because of a specific matchup or just because you feel like it's a key moment right now in the development or trajectory that you're still waiting? It's week 5 and we still don't know yet.
I can't really put my finger on anybody in particular. Maybe you can skip me and come back and I can think about somebody.
Well, tell me about something. No, that's fine.
I really don't have anybody.
Okay. Well, tell me about something, if you can, that is maybe to other people like myself even, that would be somewhat perplexing, but you feel like even though watching a team go through these up and downs, it makes sense to you because of your insight, and where it might seem like it's something that would make you nauseous, actually it makes complete sense.
Well, I mean, I think every single team that has that's starting rookies and starting rookie quarterbacks, you're going to expect that kind of up and down. Zach Wilson starting off as poorly as he did, and then flashing some moments last week and maybe even the week before a little bit. You're going to see growth in fits and starts. The fact that you look at Trey Lance last week and likely what he'll do this week. The backfield, I would say the backfield in San Francisco is still one of those things where this is where patience just has to be in play. And fantasy football is something that is notoriously known to have absolutely zero patience whatsoever because of the sense of urgency that's often baked in. But patience can be rewarded if you understand the dynamics that are involved with it at play. So when I look at, for instance, I look at the Trey Sermon situation, what ends up happening is when you look at Trey Sermon and you see first he was inactive and we didn't know for sure why. Then, he comes in and gets hurt on his first run. And then after that, he's hurt. Elijah Moore's hurt. We talked about how none of them had practice. So the utilization data was not worthwhile because it didn't cover the context. And now the rationale is that Elijah Mitchell, who got shut down in week 2 with outside runs against the Eagles, is somehow going to come back and be the main guy over Sermon because Kyle Shanahan prefers outside guys. Though we forget Devonta Freeman over Tevin Coleman. We forget Matt Breida could run inside. We forget Jeff Wilson could run inside. And we also add the myth that Shanahan we don't know what to expect from Kyle Shanahan. It's a bunch of bunk. We know what to expect. We just don't know whether anyone's going to stay healthy. And that's what his issue's been, is dealing with healthy players. When he's had healthy running backs, he uses them as lead backs. At worst, we're going to see a nice split with Mr. Inside in Sermon and outside with Mitchell when they come back. But I would stay patient with that backfield because I think, you still look at their ability to run the football and it's there. It's just about getting continuity and having the continuity of a player. So I would say that's a very good example of one. Cleveland's passing game is a good example of one where you look at Odell Beckham and he looks ready to go.
Yeah.
The question is whether the ball is going to get there to him and accurately. And for whatever reason you want to put it, this team has the offensive line, and Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham worked in the offseason together. So, at this point, I would say that's another one where we're going to see how this develops. Was last week just a bad week for Baker Mayfield? As somebody brought up to me, who's an analyst, and it seemed awfully convenient that this was the week that Baker Mayfield was going to leak out his shoulder injury, even though the past 2 weeks he's been playing
Roethlisberger style.
So, but he's everyone's against him. So you want him to succeed. You want this to work out, but at the same time, he's got to he's going to have to make those 3 to 5 throws a game that that may not get tracked by PFF because they're not going to be able to track the weight of something, especially if you don't believe in momentum. So you got to figure out a way to define what meaningful throws are. And if you can't track them, you're not going to be able to provide any justification for whether Baker Mayfield comes through in the way that the players he was compared to did. Drew Brees, Brett Favre, Russell Wilson, guys who make those 3 to 5 meaningful throws against tough teams.
Right.
And Russell Wilson, it looks like he's got a finger issue as he threw the ball. It's a little dislocated there as Fox is closing in on it. But yeah, I mean, those are two teams that I don't think we know for sure where they're heading, either in their passing game and then in their run game right now. And then you would throw in, you obviously would throw in the Jets with some of the ups and downs that they have. Whether Michael Carter is going to emerge too as a running back, I think that's another one where he's made some nice plays, but he's basically running in a situation where like they dropped him in the middle of a herd of buffalo and somebody fired a gun and he's having to figure out what to do. I mean, like I'd say instinctively he looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks great instinctively, but I'm just waiting for him to get trampled.
I was going to say, I heard there's a pilot for that show coming on next week.
Really?
I just got dropped in a herd of buffalo and someone shot a gun coming to you at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Starring Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Exactly. But is he the buffalo or is he's the host?
Kevin
And
Hart.
one of the things you said I want to touch on before I throw it back to Chris here. I think that we have made so many innovations as a community in analytics, in measuring things, in presenting the measuring of things. But one of my pet peeves is that a lot of these metrics treat, as you're alluding to, Matt, every play as equal importance. And that's how we get to some of these games where at the end of the game, someone will say, how did this player have a higher PFF grade than this other player who plays the same position? And I watched the game and it just doesn't make any sense. Because when you're treating every play as equal importance, when you're tallying things up, it just doesn't, like you said, Matt, there's 4 or 5 plays that the game actually hinges on. But we haven't quite found a way to reflect that. A lot of talk about patience, Guns N' Roses, Chris. Give me another situation, or feel free to talk about the ones that Matt brought up, where you think patience can be rewarded.
I don't know about the patience. Just one more point on the Baker Mayfield part, because I actually just heard that same phrase, the 3 to 5 throws thing, written by Mark Schofield. He was actually a piece that he wrote. Actually, I believe it just dropped yesterday, talking about Baker Mayfield and his current situation. So I would encourage folks to go take a look at that and be level-headed if you're a Browns fan. But I thought it was very well set up. And actually, I think Mark referenced a conversation with you, Matt, just about that very same thing. So it's very well done. But no, I think another team that comes to mind when I'm thinking about trying to preach patience is the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm trying to at least be as patient as possible. And, and I know you. I know.
Morning.
Yes.
Sunday morning.
Yes, and we get to watch them at 9:30 or whatever, like when the
exactly
game starts.
From London.
Yes, it's going to be great. But I think that's the one team that I'm trying to at least show as much patience about, because there's just so much going on with that team. If not from a personnel standpoint, trying to integrate a, let's say, wide receiver, tight end into your offense. You have the departure of Julio Jones. Calvin Ridley takes front and center stage. And then now you've got this backfield, I don't want to say turmoil, but it's just Cordarrelle Patterson has really made the case for him to be at least the juice that they need in that backfield in order to at least provide enough, I guess, offensive production, or to continue some of those drives to the point where defenses aren't just focusing on Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley, and it's allowing Matt Ryan to at least get a little less pressure in the pocket so he can step up and make a few throws. So it's just, there's enough. I think there's so much going on within that entire offense that I think most folks do need to be patient about it. I don't believe, at least after first 3 weeks of seeing what mostly just a conservative approach to that to the Falcons passing game, where we're seeing more short and intermediate throws from Matt Ryan. I haven't seen him take too many deep shots, if I'm remembering correctly, from the statistical perspective, but he doesn't have time. He doesn't have the time in order to manipulate the pocket or move up in the pocket enough in order to make those deep throws that we'd expected them to, like they were doing just last season. So with the problems they're having along their offensive line, without having a really, I guess, solid third option in that passing game, because it's not Hayden Hurst. I mean, we're really not seeing much production outside of their 2 focal points. It makes sense that we need to be patient and see what they can do now. If they can probably wind up creating more for Cordarrelle Patterson, if they want to make him a featured piece of that offense, if they want to use Mike Davis more as a receiver, or just something in order to give Matt Ryan some more time in order to work them into the system that we assume Arthur Smith had created throughout the entire offseason. So I think that's an offense that I'm trying to be as patient with as possible. But it's just, other than starting Cordarrelle Patterson, which you're pretty much going to have to this week with Calvin Ridley being out, it's just, there's not too many other pieces out of that offense you can trust on a weekly basis. But I do think that we just needed to give it some more time, and we can see what can happen with some more work between that entire team.
Yeah, I think that Arthur Smith, Cordarrelle Patterson. Let me tell you a story about Cordarrelle Patterson finally getting to fantasy relevance in year 9 of his career. But we, as Chris said, if you hadn't heard, it was a personal issue that will keep Calvin Ridley out. We're going to talk about some more players who might be out. Let me see if I can pull this up. All right, there
he is.
Welcoming in Dr. Jene Bramel. Gene, I'll just, before we jump in and start prepping these questions, I'll just, all this stuff from this game. Darrell Henderson in and out of the game. Looked like Tyler Higbee was a little banged up. He just caught a touchdown. We've got fingers that don't look natural. Is there anything lasting from this game, or are these going to be blips and let's just enjoy the rest of the game?
Yeah, hopefully we're going to be able to enjoy the rest of the game. I think Russell Wilson's finger looked the worst of it to me. Everybody else seems to be back and playing effectively through whatever they were dealing with earlier in the game. But that finger looks like there's going to be a ligament issue there. That finger is not the most important finger on the hand as far as releasing the ball, but it could be an issue. So we'll see how that goes. You could see them trying to tape that into a little bit better position, but Wilson could have some trouble.
Okay, let's jump in and let's start with the big ticket item, Christian McCaffrey. Hopeful. We have more than hope that we're going to see him on Sunday against Philadelphia.
He's talking as if he's preparing to play, and I don't know. Jason Lockenfora said that this was more like a 0.5 grade hamstring strain last weekend, the weekend before last. I don't know what that means. I think that's just his way of saying that this is a very low grade injury. And as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the fact that they didn't put him on injured reserve is a pretty good sign. McCaffrey wants to play. He's played towards the end of injuries before with that high ankle sprain last year. So I think he's probably going to go. You'd like to see him get another practice in and be even more optimistic on Friday, but looks like he's going to be able to play.
Gene, tell us a little bit about Chris Carson.
I didn't really like the tone of the way Pete Carroll described the injury Tuesday into Wednesday. So it's not surprising that he wasn't active today. Hard to say exactly what it is. It's a chronic situation that flared up on him, required treatment. The suspicion when you hear things like that is, could he have some sort of cervical disc issue that's been off and on problem for him over the years? Most players have some disc issues here or there. Was it severe enough where he needed a steroid injection? This could be a week-to-week thing instead of a day-to-day thing. It didn't really sound like it when they said that there was an outside chance that he'd be able to play today, but this might not be a situation where we know the truth until Pete Carroll talks about it after the game. This being a division situation where they didn't really want to give anything away, may end up playing a role there. So you would hope that he would be able to return to practice and play next week. I think there's a good chance that he can.
Dr. Gene, I'll just hit you two parts for my Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Mixon doesn't sound like he's going to play after missing practice yesterday. T. Higgins looks like he's on the way up with a couple of limited practices. What are your thoughts there?
Yep, I think that's exactly the way this is going to play out. Joe Mixon has a high ankle sprain. It's not a particularly high-grade injury, but as we've seen with Dalvin Cook and so many other skill position players over the years, this is a difficult injury to recover from, even if it's a low-grade situation. Not every high ankle sprain is a 3 to 6 week injury like Jerry Jeudy, what have you. But just, they don't know until the swelling and stiffness is there. For him not to be able to practice Wednesday and Thursday is a concern. Zach Taylor pretty much told the media earlier this week that if Mixon wasn't able to put in a full speed practice, he wasn't going to play. And for him not to do anything in a limited fashion, that they could test him and then see how he responded going into Friday in the hopes that he could practice more, is a concern. So outside chance that we'll get a limited Friday practice in a game time decision type situation, but I think it's going to be week 6 at the earliest before we see Mixon. But unexpected for Higgins to have those back-to-back limited practices so far this week. It really sounded like he was preparing to take contact and play, and the reason he wasn't able to get a quick turn was because of the quick turnaround last week to the Thursday night game. So I think Higgins is probably going to be listed questionable, maybe even taken off the injury report altogether, and he'll go. Mixon probably not till next week.
Gene, Dalvin Cook not practicing, limped off, briefly left the game last week. Is this a sign that we've reset the clock on his ankle injury?
Maybe, but I don't think so. I think, the Vikings, I wouldn't say fooled me, but I thought it was interesting 2 weeks ago when Dalvin Cook was cleared to talk to the media on Wednesday, sounded very optimistic, had the sounds of, okay, well, this high ankle sprain didn't develop a lot of swelling and stiffness on Monday and Tuesday after the game, and he was preparing to play, and then that never happened. So we're in a similar situation this week where Cook says he's going to play, but hasn't practiced yet. I'm a little bit reassured by the fact that he was able to come back and at least look okay at times after he left the game limping last week. But I don't know that you're going to get a full complement of snaps again for Cook, even if he's active. That looks like that's the way it's trending. You'd like to see him get a limited practice and then some optimism Saturday night into Sunday morning. But I don't think that there's going to be a 20-touch game in his future.
Gene, which one's the worst for fantasy owners long term here in terms of if you're worried about keeping them as starters on your roster and you might want to trade them? Ezekiel Elliott and his sore knee, Antonio Gibson and his shin, DeAndre Swift and his groin.
How about none of the above? I think all of these are
All
going
right.
to prove to be minor situations. Swift, I think the Lions are just being careful with him in practice and limiting the reps for both Williams and Swift as much as they can. It'd be nice to see him off the injury report since we're going on 5 weeks now that there's been an issue during the regular season dating back all the way into the preseason. I don't think there's much going on with Elliott's knee. I suppose, we're talking about stiffness, that this could be something that bleeds into future weeks. Gibson's shin, I think the issue with Gibson is going to be more what we think of J.D. McKissick and how many snaps he's going to take away from Gibson on passing downs and potentially in other situations as well. But I'm not too worried about his missed practice time this week. So hopefully all those players will be back to what we consider a pretty full workload for them in week 5.
Gene, do you see any sort of, short-term IR stint for Julio Jones after paying 50% of the snaps in week 3, missing last week, and still not able to log a full practice at all this week? I mean, is this going to be a longer-term thing, or do you think he'll be back sometime soon?
I don't know what to think about Julio Jones. I'm worried that we've seen so many soft tissue injuries from him over the last 2 or 3 years that this is just going to become a chronic situation. And he is not the player he was 2 or 3 years ago, where he'd be able to recover within the same week and play even with limited practice. So IR, I don't know. I think if that was likely, we probably would have already seen it. If he goes on IR this week, then yes, definitely some concern moving forward. But I think the target is probably next week for them. Doesn't look like he's got much chance of playing this week, though.
Gene, speaking of IR, Rob Gronkowski not on injured reserve, even though he's got a long list of injuries. Do you think that Tampa really expects him to play? I mean, not this weekend, but next weekend? Or do you think maybe they were just being too optimistic about how long it's going to take for him to recover from cracked ribs, fractured rib, punctured lung, and partridge in a pear tree?
And a quick follow-up, Gene. We want to know more games for Rob Gronkowski or more TV exposure without football?
We're talking the rest of his career here?
No, like just in the next 5 weeks. We know he's going to be doing he'll probably be reprising like Mrs. Doubtfire by the time we're like 80, or the Terminator, or some rock movie.
That's an interesting visual. I don't know how you get from Mrs. Doubtfire to the Terminator, but maybe Gronk can do both.
Yeah, well,
it's more talented.
If anybody could, hit him. Yeah,
it could be.
So the most concerning immediate injury was the punctured lung, and there's all sorts of varying degrees of that. The fact that he was cleared to go back in and play and did so, even if briefly, and I don't think that's not a long-term situation. That is likely healed up. It's not going to be a long-term deal. Is what we said. I don't know if it was Sunday morning or whatever it was recently. Maybe been Thursday. All these days are running together for me. Sorry. It's the multiple rib fractures that they're issue now. So it's a difficult pain management concern, but it's not necessarily a long-term situation. So I think I don't see much chance of him playing this week. I think they want to insert and be certain that the lung is healed and that they give those rib injuries a little bit longer so that there's not a significant pain management situation going on. But I think next week is possible for Gronk.
Well, Darnell Mooney, what about his groin?
He's been playing through this injury over the last couple of weeks. I think it was a back initially, and now it's a groin, and those two things were not related. But Chicago's been limiting his practice participation. But I don't remember if I checked his practice or his snap count last week or not, but he's been playing 100% of the time. I don't think it's going to be an issue.
I saw either yesterday or the day beforehand that there was an indication that Jerry Jeudy might be able to beat his 6 to 8 week timeline. Have you seen anything to confirm that, Dr. Gene?
Nothing specific. I think it's possible, but I still think we're looking at week 7 as a likely return date for him. Maybe there's a little bit more that goes on in practice and he's recovering a little bit more quickly, but that had the looks of a little bit of a long-term injury, and the way that the Broncos schedule sets up, I think week 7 is the target.
We touched on the major injury situations. I guess we could do one more round because Chris broke the seal on an interesting topic, just the idea of players cleared to return. And just taking Chris's question and expanding it, because we've got a lot of players, the very least a few have been designated return and started the 21-day clock. We're still waiting to hear more updates on someone like Michael Thomas. If somebody was trying to be sly and use a waiver wire pickup this week to get ahead of the game on somebody, I know we talked about this. Curtis Samuel maybe was one you were trying to, and now he's not practicing. Is there anybody else that you would want to put on our radar, or maybe warn us off and say, hey, if you're rushing out to get this guy, not so fast?
I don't want much part of Michael Thomas right now. It's an injury that was significant. It's one that, yes, you might hear a 3 to 4 week recovery time frame, but player after player after player over the years who have had these type of ankle surgeries, they may be physically cleared to return, but they're not back to full strength within that 3 to 4 month time frame. So, I know October is kind of the sweet spot for Michael Thomas. He may well be activated and play, but it's going to be weeks after that probably before you see him in full strength and able to take care of himself on the field enough to get the number of targets he was before. Just looking at this list, Michael Gallup, maybe. It's been a little bit interesting that we haven't heard so much about him and his calf injury this week. He is eligible to return this week, and I don't think they've designated him to return yet. Traquan Smith, we're still waiting on as well. I know you guys were talking about Jeff Wilson during the waiver wire show. I agree with you. It's a little bit early for him yet as well. I think that is more of a 5 to 6 month situation with a May injury. We're at least a month away from him probably even being designated to return, much less playing, and he's not. The first week he would be eligible was week 7. So I don't know that you're getting a big jump on him yet. I don't know that Tua Tagovailoa is such a
right.
I mean, what you get maybe in
let him sit out
leagues,
there.
Yeah. I don't know that's so. No, I don't think so. I'm not too excited about Tarek Cohen. I don't know that he's coming back anytime soon, even though David Montgomery's been out. Jarvis Landry and Michael Gallup are probably going to be the players, and then Jerry Jeudy. That would likely be capable of being put in a starting lineup moving forward. I don't have a lot of faith that Michael Thomas is going to be a helpful player for you until December at the earliest.
Gene, Joe Mixon kind of got leg whipped at the sideline, and obviously incurred an ankle injury off of that. But can you talk a little bit about the mechanism of that injury? Because it was interesting that it was his ankle when he got leg whipped kind of in the back of the leg and the calf.
Yeah, it looked like a high ankle sprain to me. I don't remember if it was Adam Schefter or somebody else that said low-grade injury, and I've seen some reports that are taking that to mean that it's a low ankle sprain. I don't think that's the case. I think it is a lower grade high ankle sprain, but it is a high ankle sprain from what I could see on video, and just that foot got caught up underneath him. There's really the only one television angle that there was on there, but that's what it looked like to me. Not a surprise that he doesn't look likely to play this week.
Gene, what do you think about Ben Roethlisberger for this week? It's pec, hip, neck, back,
pride.
All sorts of pride, whatever you want to list him as. How do you think he's going to look for Sunday and for the rest of the season at this point, since he's taken so many hits?
Yeah, this is what Ben Roethlisberger does, right? I mean, he's going to play through these injuries. How effectively he plays is debatable. So, the arm strength doesn't seem to be there. His mobility is not there in the same way it was 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not the same player playing through injury that we've seen in the past. But I don't think there's any question, even though we're going to see some DNPs from him scattered throughout practice participation for the foreseeable future, I would expect him to be in uniform and in shotgun and throwing the ball around on the weekends for the foreseeable future.
And we're very lucky that for the foreseeable future. Haven't lost a thing, Gene. I don't know, was it 12, 13, 14 years ago that you started coming on the show with us? A long time ago. And you still have all the arm strength, all the field vision, all the mobility, everything that we need to stay on top of things and look really smart, because we listen to Dr. Gene. And remember, you get Dr. Gene with us on Sunday mornings. Chris Allen also. You get the injury rounds, Football Guy subscribers. You want to take advantage of that. You get the best injury information in the business. Dr. Gene, thank you as always.
Well, you're welcome. I think I've had a little bit more gray hair than 13, 14, 15 years ago, and I'm clearly not capable of staying up as late with you guys as I used to. But the second hour of the Audible is long gone. So, all right, y'all. I will talk to you Sunday morning.
Geritol, my friend. Geritol.
That doesn't work.
Metamucil. That does work to get things moving. Speaking of getting things moving or not moving, Matt, you want to give us a little overview of what's gone down since we've come on the air?
I mean, we saw a long pass to Deshaun Jackson, who caught it and ran with it down into the red zone. Darrell Henderson got back into the game and scored. And then, Russell Wilson banged up his finger, as we talked about. He came back onto the field. They haven't been able to move much offense at this point. And at this point, though, they are getting the ball back with a 16-7 deficit at home, and still in the third quarter, it looks like.
Yeah, we'll see if Russell Wilson.
Geno Smith is walking out onto the field, it looks like.
So
there you go. Wilson may not be able to finish this game, and he has not missed a game in his career.
Right. That's the thing. Russell Wilson. And he's another one that has played with injuries, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady style, that probably would have sidelined other quarterbacks a few times in his career. And yeah, that's kind of stunning. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can I just mention something? Because I know you aren't going to expect this, especially after we just talked about Ben. But, I've never been a huge fan of Ben Roethlisberger, but I got to say, we've had some younger folks I've heard who are like in this industry talking about Ben Roethlisberger never being mobile. And they obviously don't remember that Ben Roethlisberger was one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the league for quite some time. And I think he's the last of an era of quarterbacks along the lines of Favre and Elway and McNair and Garrard and players who played in the era of the NFL that was a half-court Detroit Pistons kind of game on speed, probably, or on steroids, literally. But he dealt with, they dealt with the kind of punishment where they weren't protected. Right. And he and Brady might be the last of their kind that we're going to see. And specifically Roethlisberger, because Brady could never move. Roethlisberger could. He could prolong plays with his physical game. And seeing something on Twitter where they had Chris Sims ask him about his, all the mechanical stuff he does. And he was like, I've never had any coaching. I just, I just throw the ball.
Of course not,
I don't, not. And Chris Sims is like, your technique's perfect. He's like, I just always just threw this way, and I just think it's, you may not appreciate him off the field, because honestly, I really don't, and could care less about him off the field. But on the field, I really, even though his game is dying, I love the competitor that he was. And I love the way that he played the game, and he's he's the end of it, because now we're in a full court game, and there's elements of it that are a lot of fun, but these quarterbacks get pampered by comparison, and I think that's a good thing. We no longer need to weaponize the equipment that we have, but at the same time, it's you can appreciate what kind of characteristics players had to bring to the table that they no longer have to bring.
I'll give you another one. Dante Culpepper.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, what it is that combatant mentality about the quarterback position, like you said, that's not there. And with Roethlisberger, I'm glad at least that you brought, and for you of all people, because where's your Turkey Jones, right? Isn't that the Cleveland Brown?
Yeah.
Where, when you used to have control. See, that's another thing we've lost over the course of the Audible, that you could jump in and show everybody that. So, of course, you would say something nice about Ben Roethlisberger in this swan song for him. Just a few more minutes, we're going to watch maybe the intrigue drain out of the Thursday night game, Chris. But I guess, I want to just go open-ended. I feel like I want to ask you, like, how's your season going? Who's been your most valuable player, least valuable player, who's really impressed you, who's really disappointed you, just because on Sunday we just we get a chance to do a lot of takes, but always in the context of questions.
Yeah,
so I just
rapid fire.
Right. And we love everyone that shows up, and we appreciate the opportunity to provide that service for everybody. But I just want to open the floor and just give the opportunity to talk about something that has stood out to you through 4 weeks, because the season moves so fast, and right now we can pause at least because of what Geno Smith said.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We've got that time, unless we really think that he can manufacture some sort of touchdown drive to bring the Seahawks back into contention. But no, I have to hand it to Sam Darnold, like through the first month of the season. I really do think I was already impressed with what Joe Brady and Matt Rule were able to orchestrate around Teddy Bridgewater last season. But seeing what Sam Darnold has made, I don't want to say like a complete 180, because there's still some elements of his game. He's still like wiping off like the Gase like from him. And even just like his, I don't know, just like the fundamentals that I don't really think that he really had the chance to work on once he got stuck in New York, because they were just constantly putting him in just like these poor situations where you're having to pass deep downfield, like where that's really not like something that he's particularly shown the proclivity to be able to do that. So with the personnel around him, of course, you would expect him to be better. Like if you put any quarterback, literally after we just watched like Teddy Bridgewater, like play with DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. I mean, if it's not Curtis Samuel from last year, then you do have other role players behind them. And of course, you throw in a healthy Christian McCaffrey for the first couple of weeks, then yes, you would expect Sam Darnold to be at least let's say top half of the league in terms of like quarterbacking, or even from a fantasy perspective. But to see what 3 straight 300-yard passing games, I mean, to put them in contention for the NFC South, I mean, I do think that even from a statistical standpoint, like he does look like a completely different quarterback. And now one of the things that has still shown up in his game is the fact that once he is put in the situation where, I mean, the team pretty much has to rely on his arm in order to get them through to the end of a game, he will throw that inaccurate pass that turns into an interception, and then things just kind of snowball from there. I don't think his second interception from Sunday, I'm not going to put that one on him, but like the first interception, I think that's New York. I think that's the Jets, Sam Darnold, like kind of creeping out from behind. But either way, I'm very much impressed with what that team has done like for him, and then what Sam Darnold has shown as the ability to show that, hey, I can, like, given the right situation, he can wind up putting more into like his game, putting it more into his mechanics and fundamentals. And we start to see that in not just the short and intermediate passing to DJ Moore, but even some of the deeper shots that he's taken. I mean, all of that is starting to come together, and I'm hoping that continues to be the case. I mean, because moving forward, the Panthers, they've got a really good schedule, like moving forward, not one that's going to put them into those, back against the wall type of situations. Cause I think they've got Philly, I saw the Giants on their schedule. They've got Atlanta ahead of them. I think their 2 toughest matchups is probably going to be New England, I think in week 8 or somewhere around there. And maybe another one as well, but it's just, they have the schedule, they have the personnel, they have the offensive pieces around him. And Sam Darnold's playing well enough within that offense, whether it's some of the spread concepts that they're using, the design runs that they're using him on as well. I mean, all of that seeming to come together for him to have, I think he could possibly, at the very least, be in the top 12 discussion on a week-to-week basis. But we'll see like how the rest of the season shakes up, and if he can wind up maintaining that level of production over the rest of the season.
Right, the comeback player of the year conversation. And I think of it, some of these quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, some of these quarterbacks, Jared Goff, it's almost like a rescue adoption, of a pet, where you get him in the new home and you're like, okay, what issues do we have to work out from your previous home? Where are you jumpy about, or what things have you not learned? What behaviors do we need to correct, or otherwise do we need to figure out? And like you said, with Sam Darnold, it's gone pretty well. And he always did have, I don't want to say vacant, because vacant sounds like a negative word, but it didn't seem like emotionally the Jets and Adam Gase were getting to him as much. And maybe that's helped him just leave that behind him. Although there's still, like you said, a few of the flaws show up, sometimes pocket presence, sometimes his penchant, I think more for playing outside of structure than in structure. But Carolina has to be happy. Now, the schedule they had, I wonder. We'll see what they do. It's an interesting yardstick game against Philadelphia. I reverse bloomed Geno Smith, didn't I, man?
Yeah.
98-yard drive.
He hit Colby Parkinson on a key play on a third read, and then DK Metcalf got behind cornerback number 31, who just was looking at the quarterback and not where
Darius
DK
Williams,
Metcalf was going. Yeah. Or Mitchell, I don't know. But basically Metcalf got behind him, and here we are.
Yeah, and they're rocking. There's a billion questions I want to ask you, Matt. I really got to get you on the couch now that I haven't had a chance just to grill you or otherwise pick your brain about some things. But I want to ask you just one question that I think is maybe should be the most talked about player in the league. And it's Kyler Murray. Is what Kyler Murray's doing, is what the Arizona offense is doing, is it sustainable? Or is this one of those things that might be a mirage or illusion and things will level off in time?
I mean, I think things will level off on a way that it does with all good teams, that there are going to be weaknesses or flaws that will be exploited with this team. They still don't shift enough to my liking. They don't do enough things to really maximize the personnel that they have, but you're seeing some good things out of it that are sustainable. AJ Green being inside for the past 3 years, I've been talking about somebody needs to make AJ Green a slot receiver because he would be devastating there with the way he runs routes. And now you can put him in the slot with Rondale Moore and switch him out with him and Christian Kirk. And all three of them are very good slot options with offering different elements of what you can do in the slot game and who you match up with. So it's nice to see that. But I think their offense needs to be a little bit more game planned in terms of it would be nice to see Cliff Kingsbury actually live up to his name,
right,
in terms of what he does with game planning and fitting his system to the personnel. It seems like he's inched in that direction, but maybe he needs Jason Peters from the Bears to come over and threaten him too. I'm not saying Peters did that, but that's what I would have thought after watching
Sounds
what
good to
happened
me
with Matt Nagy.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin Fields is going to start. Real quick, since you brought it up, Matt, do you see any dramatic change now that dramatic change happened in Matt Nagy's tone and course, or do you think we're still going to see Justin Fields be a non-factor for fantasy, the passing game, except for maybe Darnell Mooney? A lot of people with Allen Robinson are saying, what do I do with Allen Robinson? What do we do with the new Justin Fields era Bears offense?
Well, you probably just need to remain patient with it because unless Matt Nagy takes back everything that he delegated away and owns what he did in the past, which is 5-man protections, no zone read, not using a running game, not using the threat of Fields as a runner. If they take all that away, then yes, forget it. But the thing is that, Justin Fields was dropped in the herd of rabid buffalo in Cleveland, basically, and as good, there are only maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league who can handle 3 points of pressure at the same time on a consistent basis and get a big play. One of them's on the sideline right now holding a tennis ball in this game. The other one's Kyler Murray. And Justin Fields isn't going to be able to do that just yet. So when you put 3 points of pressure on him by 3 guys who are, very good at getting penetration, then that's not going to work. But this week or last week against Detroit, he often only had to deal with 1 point of pressure, and then he could bait that pressure and get outside and make some really nice plays. So I think you've got to understand that now that they've figured they got Bill Lazor in there and he's like, listen, we're going to use the tight ends and chip defensive ends on the way out. We're going to have 6-7 men protection. We're going to run the ball. We're going to do some misdirection with the run game, even with Montgomery out. We're going to give them the threat of Fields in that way. We're going to actually play offense in a way where, a district attorney couldn't, level charges of gross negligence on Matt Nagy or young child or young adult endangerment. If there was like quarterback endangerment, they should have levied that. I mean, it was awful. You don't do that. So it's gotten better though, because what they've done with all these elements, it now puts Justin Fields in a place where he can get into a rhythm with his receivers. His receivers now are going to get in a rhythm early. They start making big catches like Mooney did last week, where Fields maybe wasn't pinpoint accurate. And then Fields is getting confident because his receivers are making plays for him, and he's not dealing with the herd of buffalo. Now it's just a stray calf running by him in a field. He can avoid that and make a play. So I think Fields is on the right track. He may not be a QB1 the rest of the way, but I think he's someone that will give you kind of the highs and lows dictated by a matchup. He'll give you good enough matchups that you can probably use him as a flex play starter and add him to your lineup or add him to your roster as maybe a high upside guy in case there is a little bit of a breakthrough. And part of that is that they duct tape Matt Nagy to his office chair on game day.
Just drop him off somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fire him and Urban Meyer. They'll be fine. And in time, it'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. I see the future. It's one without Urban Meyer in Jacksonville and Matt Nagy in Chicago, and hopefully
Sigmund Bloom psychic hotline. You and Dionne
right,
Warwick.
Exactly. What was it back in the 95 cents a minute or something like that? And Matt, if I so humbly can suggest, there has to be a gut check on crimes committed against football players by coaches, and you can charge them and you can declare them guilty or not guilty. I would totally tune in. You really the new Judge Wapner of the football world. So quarterback endangerment. Let's start with quarterback endangerment. I think that alone we could easily do more than a few shows on. And guess what? We do a lot of shows here every week at footballguys.com, on the footballguys.com channel, on YouTube. Check out everything that we're doing. Too many great shows to name, too many great people to name. As you can subscribe, you'll get the notifications if you click on that bell, so you always know when we're going live. When you come to the shows, please like the show, comment. It helps us. You want to know how to help Football Guys. It helps us find new people to engage with, because that's what we enjoy doing here. And especially with the game of football. By the way, the Rams go down the field. Matthew Stafford with the answer. So that's what happened, in case you were wondering, but I know you weren't, folks. And if you're wondering when we're going to be back, I'll be back at least on Sunday morning with Chris, and a nice cameo from Dr. Gene, getting you ready for everything on Sunday morning while there's football going on. Falcons and Jets in London. We like being on this path, on this journey with you folks always, because you're so classy.